Good morning. Dante's Inferno, 32, Caïna and Antenora. We saw in Canto 31, Dante and Virgil descend with the help of one of the giants into this lowest section of hell, the last and lowest section of hell, Cocytus, where the sins of complex fraud are punished. We'll go through the first two sections of this last part of hell today in Canto 32. Caïna, where we have people who betrayed their family, and Antenora, where we have political traitors of various kinds. So Dante and Virgil, remember how they're going down through hell, and there are a lot of scenes that we've seen throughout that are going to be repeated or echoed here in this last section of hell. A lot of these themes are going to come back and are going to be reinforced. So just as we saw the entry into the last couple of sections of hell, Dante and Virgil couldn't do it alone. Here also they had to have the giant Antaeus help them to descend into this section of hell. And when they get to the bottom of that cliff, and they finally stand in Cocytus, Dante opens up here by asking for divine assistance again, as he had done at the beginning of the Inferno, and as is common with epic poetry. Remember, we saw this in the Odyssey. He calls on the muses for help, these Greek goddesses of poetry and the arts. He says here, to talk about the bottom of the universe, the way it truly is no child's play, no task for tongues that gurgle baby talk. But may those heavenly ladies aid my verse, who aided Amphion to wall in Thebes, that my words may tell exactly what I saw. So it's like he's beginning here again. This section of hell is so terrible, so unlike anything that we might experience in our daily lives, that he needs divine assistance again to continue to even tell us about it. And when he descends to this final level of hell, we notice that it's a lake of ice. Usually our popular depictions of hell, we see it as being fiery, and we saw fiery parts of hell in the Inferno before. But here, the very lowest section of icy, it's cold. It's removed from the warmth of God's love. If you think of fire as being an image of not only the destruction, but also the warmth and the light that it brings, it makes sense that the cold here would be the opposite of anything good. It's a lack of heat. There's a lack of light. There's a lack of any sort of love or affection here in this bottom section of hell. And the souls here, just like we had seen souls before, immersed to varying degrees in different substances, like in the river of boiling blood, or in muck, or in all sorts of other things. Here also, the sinners here in Cocytus are partially encased in ice, or some of them, we'll see later, are entirely encased in ice. And so Dante descends to this lowest level of hell, and he sees this. It's like a giant lake of ice, he says. He compares it to a frozen river, one of these massive European rivers. He mentions the Don River in Russia, which freezes completely over in winter. But he says it's so thick, it's so perfectly frozen, that even if a mountain fell on it, it wouldn't crack. And yet there are these souls frozen there in the ice, with just their faces sticking out. So as he goes along, he's going to encounter a number of different souls, and with these heads being down by his feet, he's going to have to be careful where he steps. And some of the souls will call him out about this. The first pair of souls that I want to talk about, Napoleone and Alessandro, were two brothers around Dante's time in Italy who constantly quarreled over their inheritance and eventually killed each other over it. And we see them frozen and stuck together because they're butting heads against each other, quite literally. Their hair is all combined together and matted. And as Dante speaks to them, they cry, and the tears as they come out freeze and stick them together even more. Remember Paolo and Francesca way back up in Canto 5. There also we see two people who are in hell together, but this isn't out of affection. In fact, it's out of their hatred for each other. They're stuck together, and the pain that they feel constantly glues them together even more permanently in an even more painful way in this manner. There's this perversion of what should have been brotherly love, drawing them close to each other. Here, they're drawn together in brotherly hate. Another figure mentioned here, we don't see him directly, but he's mentioned here as being in this ice, Mordred. This is a figure from medieval legend, from the legends of King Arthur. Depending on the version that you read, Mordred was either Arthur's nephew or his bastard son. And Mordred tried to rebel against Arthur and overthrow him. And so, being that it was here against a kinsman, Mordred is also put into this section of hell. As Dante moves along, he transitions from the first section of hell, Caïna, named after Cain in Genesis, who killed his brother, into Antenora. And here we have the political traitors being punished. And as Dante is walking along, the heads that are sticking out are a little less visible than they were before. And he accidentally, or maybe accidentally on purpose, kicks one of them in the face. And this soul starts complaining and yelling. So Dante tries here what he's tried before, which is to get the souls to give him information by promising to write about them. Up till now, that's worked. He's been able to get a lot of information about souls by promising them a certain kind of perverse fame in his work. Here, however, it doesn't work. In fact, this soul thinks that that's a good reason not to let Dante know who he is, not to tell him anything, because he's ashamed of what he did. Even that sort of self-love is gone down here. And so Dante recognizes this soul who won't tell him who he is. And so he starts pulling at his hair to make him tell. And as Dante's doing that, the soul's protesting he's never going to tell. One of the other souls, as a sort of act of spite, tells Dante who this is. It turns out to be this man, Bocca degli Abati, who was a Ghibelline. Remember these political movements during Dante's time. Dante was a Guelph, but Bocca was a Ghibelline. And what he did was that he pretended to be a Guelph, and at a crucial moment in a battle, he turned against the Guelphs. So Dante puts him down here, and that's the reason for this personal aspect to Dante's hatred here. He feels personally slighted by this, as someone who pretended to be a political ally of his, in fact, turned directly against him. Then, to get revenge, Bocca calls out and tells Dante who the other soul was who revealed his name. A man named Boso da Duera, who was an Italian who was supposed to prevent some French troops from marching through his city, but instead he received a bribe from the French king. And in return for that money, he told his men, don't attack them, just let them pass. Two other souls mentioned here, Ganelon. Sort of interesting because at the beginning of Canto 31, we have this reference to one of the most important works of medieval literature, the Song of Roland, which tells the story of a knight named Roland in Charlemagne's army who is ambushed, but he stands his ground to enable the rest of the army to get away safely. And the reference that comes at the beginning of Canto 31 is because of this sound that Dante hears. He compares it to the blast of a horn. And as Roland is dying in the Song of Roland, he takes his horn and he blows on the horn as a signal so hard that it breaks. Now here, Dante brings back that theme of the Song of Roland again. Ganelon was one of one of Roland's men who betrayed him and led to his defeat and death. So again, Dante is picking up on this reference he already made here, bringing in Ganelon, the betrayer there. Tybalt was actually a Ghibelline traitor, a traitor against the Ghibellines, and you can read more in the notes about him. Okay, so two subsections of this main section of hell here, Cocytus. And at the very end of this canto, and you should read it because the description here is great, we get introduced to the guys who will be the first figures in the next section of hell. And we see the two of them, and one of them is chewing on the other one's skull. And Dante makes this reference to a Greek myth about a soldier who was mortally wounded as he killed another soldier. And so as he lay there dying, he asked his men to bring him the head of the man he had just killed, who had mortally wounded him. And he tears at the head with his teeth as a sort of last act of rage against him. So we'll see who these guys are in Canto 33 as we progress further towards the center of hell. Please read the notes. Please let me know if you have any questions, and the Canto 32 questions are posted on Jupiter Grades. See you guys soon.